Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute or so. All right, I still see some people trickling in, but it's about one after, and I think we can get started. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon for those of you who are on the East Coast. Good morning still, I believe, if you're on the West Coast. I'm Elise Shaw. I'm the Director of Education, Labor, and Worker Justice here at CLASP. Thank you for joining us today. This is CLASP's first Equity Matters conversation of 2026. For those of you who are new to our Equity Matters series, welcome. Equity Matters serves as CLASP's virtual convening space where policy officials, researchers, advocates, organizational and institutional leaders, and community members come together to engage in critical discussions on the root causes of structural inequalities and explore community and policy-driven solutions to dismantle systemic racism, misogyny, and economic justice. A few housekeeping notes before we dive into the discussion. Please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves, respectfully comment and react to the conversation, and share resources. If you have a question for one or more of the panelists, please use the Q&A function below to submit them. You can submit questions at any point during the webinar, and we will save them for the Q&A session at the end of the conversation. Now, I do want to say that this webinar will likely discuss topics that may be triggering or distressing for some. We are sharing resources for support in the chat for those who may need them. Please take care of yourselves throughout this conversation and throughout the rest of this year. I know we all need it. Today, we are addressing gender-based violence and harassment as a workplace safety issue. I would like to start with a quick level set. When we use the term gender-based violence and harassment, or GBVH, we are not talking about behaviors that stem from sexual attraction or desire. We are talking about behaviors that are rooted in white supremacist and patriarchal structures of power and control. These are structures that are an integral part of the current authoritarian playbook. And these behaviors range from subtle verbal harassment to sexual assault or rape or even murder. These systemic power imbalances are replicated across our society, including in workplaces, and result in violence and harassment to tens of millions of workers across all gender identities and in all sectors of work. GBVH in the world of work impacts all workers, either directly or indirectly. It undermines their worker safety, it pushes talented workers out of key industries, and often impacts their economic security and health and well-being. Yet we know that GBVH at work disproportionately impacts women, immigrants, LGBTQ individuals, and workers who are paid low wages or are in precarious temporary or gig work arrangements. As my colleague Lulit's recent paper on temp workers in New Orleans shows, almost all the workers interviewed there experienced some form of violence or harassment while working on Mardi Gras cleanup crews. At the same time, CLASP has been actively tracking the rolling back of worker protections and worker rights coming from the Trump administration. This administration's rolling back of safety standards in the workplace, the gutting of worker protections, and outright attacks against women, including the rescission of the EEOC harassment guidance, paired with the uptick of violence against women, such as the brutal workplace murder of tradeswoman Amber Check, means it's even more important that we proactively address GBVH in the world of work. We also know that current efforts to address GBVH at work are largely top-down, led by well-intentioned employers with minimal to no input from those who disproportionately experience these abuses. They focus on complaint mechanisms designed to minimize liability rather than incidence prevention, which often can lead to retaliation against workers who file complaints. These current systems and structures are insufficient. They are designed and implemented by those in power who often have a vested interest in keeping those power structures intact. So today's discussion will focus on the many ways of creating mechanisms for prevention that stem from centering worker and survivor voices, and the ways that building worker power is central to addressing GBVH at work. Today, I am joined by an illustrious panel of individuals, all of whom are working on this very issue in different ways. First, we have Robin Runge, a CLASP board member and the director of the Domestic Violence Law Clinic at the University of Oregon School of Law. Next, we have Lark Jackson, director of the Equity Resource Center at Chicago Women in Trades. We have Kate Burkhardt, who is the director of the Bureau of Labor Standards at the Maine Department of Labor. We have Latanya Marshall, secretary of Unite Here Local 1 in Chicago and housekeeper at the Blackstone Hotel. And last but not least, Agata Morgan, Colorado Program Director at Justice for Migrant Women. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm actually going to start with you, Robin. You have worked on addressing GBVH both in the US and internationally. Can you talk to us about the lessons you have learned throughout your career and what the US can actually learn from how this work has moved internationally?
Sure. So thank you so much, Elise, and thank you for CLASP for having this event. It's a privilege and an honor to be in space with these phenomenal women, women worker leaders, truly. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about what I've learned through my work on these issues internationally and domestically. I was just saying before we started that I had the privilege of joining a global webinar that was put on by our union sisters around the world and here in the States. And it called We're the People We're Waiting For. And it was so grounding for me. And I'm in Oregon, which meant I had to get up really early. And yet I was so happy to be there because it reminded me that we are a part of a movement and that there is a global movement right now to end gender-based violence and harassment in the world of work. That has been started by women leaders in the US and around the globe. It's been going on for now 20 years. And it has been successful in adopting binding international labor agreements like International Labor Organization Convention 190 and its recommendation 206 that for the first time ever acknowledged that we have a human right to be free of violence and harassment, including gender-based violence and harassment in the world of work. And provides guidelines, and that has now been the fastest ratified treaty by the ILO ever. 55 countries have already ratified it since it was adopted in 2019. And what I know is that women worker leaders made that happen. They worked collectively with employers and governments who signed on to that. There was almost unanimous vote in support of that, including the US government in 2019. And so what I know is that worker-led and women worker-led power changes the world and that creates the tools that we need to address this. That as we know, every workplace is different and every workplace needs to create their own mechanisms. Unfortunately, this remains an epidemic. It remains a primary barrier to economic justice for all workers, frankly, but disproportionately women workers. And as you said, Elise, it is again and again used as a tool of power and oppression to remind us women, and particularly women of color, of our role in the workplace and in society. As you said, that is what it is. It is a tool of oppression where they use gender inequality and structures in our social constructions in society as a tool of repression. And it's really hard to address something that's been around for millions of years. We just need to say that loud. And so this is not a problem that gets solved in a minute. It takes a process, but we know what the secret sauce is. And we have amazing women here who are going to talk about it. I have had the privilege of being involved in working with worker women in Lesotho and other countries around the world where they have come together, importantly, come together with their employers and with their governments. And that's something I want to lift up is that tripartite approach, that social dialogue, in my personal experience, is necessary. I think unions are have to lead this. We need collective bargaining. We need freedom of association in order for this to be addressed. But what we see again and again is when we work in partnership with employers, when we work in partnership, right, with nonprofit organizations that support workers and women, that's when we come up with solutions. And we let women workers harness the power they already have. I don't like the term empower because that makes it sound like I'm giving y'all power and I'm not. But to harness the power they already have to direct interventions. And so the interventions that I personally have witnessed and been a part of are collective bargaining agreements that have language that define gender-based violence and harassment in that workplace as those women defined it. So in a garment factory in Cambodia, that is supervising sewing machine mechanic touching me or demanding sexual favors in exchange for, fixing my sewing machine. That's what it looks like there. It's not a broad definition. It's a very tailored and understood question. Participatory research, we're going to hear from our sisters from Unite here. That is essential. We need to provide a space where workers come together and define what this looks like for them. And then also ask the magic question, what do you want to be safe? What do you need to be safe? And I tell you what, the answer to that question is not a better complaint system. We need one, don't get me wrong, but in a perfect world, I need to never use that. So we know culture change, which is this buzzword, but we understand that culture change comes about when everyone in that workplace understands their role in making that culture change and that they benefit from it, right? So that they invest in interventions, which include and they vary again depending upon the workplace, right? I'm in an office. What I need in this workspace is different than my sisters who are janitors, that are different than my sisters who are farm workers, right? That are different than my sisters in the trades. That's why this group is so dynamite. And you're going to hear that. And I hope people pick up on that and hear that we need to understand there is no one size fits all. That's our mistake, but it doesn't mean it's insurmountable. And that we can continue to have people tell us what is working. And again, we have collective bargaining agreements, we have workplace policies, we have trainings led by worker women, by peers, not by employers, but with employers, right? And not about what the law says. If I have one more person who commits these crimes say to me, I love those trainings, Robin, because I get to figure out exactly how I get away with it. Okay. The problem isn't that we don't know the law. The question is grappling with why do we still have this in our culture and our society? Right? How does that impact all of us and what role do we have? And that's a different conversation than this is illegal and that's not. So I'm really going to stop talking now because I think I've highlighted that. I'm going to share some resources of some agreements that have been signed that are binding agreements between supply chains, so H&M, right, Levi's and others with garment factories in countries around the world where they're working with their union women. And these interventions, these binding agreements have actually led to documented decreases in gender-based violence in those workplaces. And most importantly to me, like these people feel safer and proud to go to those workplaces because they are not in fear. They are not in fear every day of trying to navigate another person grabbing them in a way that they're feeling uncomfortable or pushing them into a closet and raping them, right? That's not happening anymore. And everybody is happier. And we hear from employers that they continue to support these agreements because there's greater productivity. I don't like that's not the first reason I raise. It's the last one, but it's not irrelevant because you know what working women know? They know that if our business goes out of business, we don't have a job. So we're invested in that. We're invested in making sure that our workplaces are safe for all of us and free from gender-based violence and harassment. So I hope that was helpful. I'm a bit of a cheerleader, but thank you so much, Elise. And again, my sisters, thank you for being here and for the work you do every day.
I love your enthusiasm, Robin. It's always a pleasure to hear. Um, Lark, I want to turn to you next. Chicago Women in Trades works to improve women's economic equity by increasing participation in high wage construction trades jobs that are traditionally held by men, we know. Can you tell us about CWIT's trainings and policies that help prevent gender-based violence and harassment in the construction trades and what makes them effective?
Definitely. First, thank you, Elise and class, for this opportunity to share our resources and just things we've been thought partnering with our collaborators on. And Robin, that was an amazing framing for this conversation. So I'm just really grateful to be here. So, in our industry, we see the ways in which tradeswomen experience the effects of power dynamics, power imbalances, and of course, unfortunately, the abuse of power, right? But what we do have at our disposal is industry relevant prevention strategies that we use to navigate these realities. So, for instance, we are an affiliate of the Rise Up program, which stands for Respect, Inclusion, Safety, and Equity. And it was actually developed by ANU, which is another tradeswomen-led organization in Washington. And this respectful worksite training program is really designed to teach construction contractors, registered apprenticeship programs, how to create safe and respectful learning and work environments within the context of construction. Um, and to kind of echo Robin's point, from the perspective that it's not only the right thing to do, but it also does maximize productivity and reduces distractions, right? So one training model within this program that I've just personally found super helpful to this conversation we're having today is actually their bystander intervention training, which provides practical steps a worker can take to support others when they witness poor job site behavior, right? So that they don't have that bystander syndrome, right? Without, of course, endangering themselves. CWIT's Equity Resource Center, in particular, offers training on the health and safety of women in construction, which really positions harassment prevention as a necessary tool to create a safe and respectful work site for all workers. And we also provide training on best practices and outreach, recruitment, assessment, and training and retention of women in the skilled construction and manufacturing trades as a way to first normalize women's participation in these industries. Um, and I really want to focus in on that piece about normalizing, right, women's presence. To this end, we've not only taken a technical assistance training approach, but we've also taken a policy approach with the Chicago Construction Workforce Equity Ordinance, which was created by the Chicago Construction Workforce Equity Coalition, led by CWIT, Revolution Workshop, the Chicago Jobs Council, the Chicago Urban League, the Shriver Center on Poverty and Law, and community assistance programs. And this ordinance really takes concrete action to improve access to and retention in trades careers for underrepresented groups and requires the city of Chicago to provide resources to implement and enforce policy, provide community oversight through an advisory board. And it also requires data transparency and accountability from contractors and the city of Chicago to provide accountability on performance. Again, taking a multi-pronged approach to first and foremost normalize women's presence, right, in a male-dominated industry. Our policy team has also been working diligently on the administration and lactation support on construction sites. House Bill 476, Senate Bill 3465. And it's a bill that strengthens Illinois law to ensure that construction workers who ministrate or express milk have safe, sanitary, and dignified working conditions on construction sites. And our organization is also a member of the workplace, gender-based violence and harassment working group. So really focusing on this coalition building aspect to this work has been really crucial to the progress we've made in combating this issue. Um, Working in collaboration with the consultant Brave Path Strategies, CWIT has also developed a gold standard harassment prevention policy against gender-based violence and harassment. This policy is for contractors, subcontractors, employers, and crew leadership working on construction sites. And it outlines expectations, training, reporting procedures, and accountability measures to ensure safe and respectful workplaces and help these stakeholders respond to sexual harassment, discrimination based on gender, sex, and sexual orientation, and other forms of unwelcome behavior. Um, Last fall we launched our Your Rights at Work workshop series for tradeswomen in Chicago, so they can empower themselves with the information about local, state, and federal laws that still exist to protect them against harassment and discrimination. And we also did this workshop in collaboration with the Illinois Department of Human Rights. You may notice a theme here of the importance of coalition building, of collaboration, right? We'll also be expanding this workshop series for Philadelphia tradeswomen in May. And I would say another key aspect of our work, another key strategy is really also providing guidance on mentorship program development and also supporting existing tradeswomen's committees. Um, And these are strategies that we've always actually employed in combating gender-based violence and harassment. But I would say now we're really amplifying our work in these areas through the leadership of our retention team, really helping tradeswomen's committees sustain themselves and still find ways to thrive, even as some of these groups are experiencing divestment and isolation at this time. So we really are taking a multi-pronged approach to this work.
Thank you, Lark. So just slightly busy. But I really, really love the emphasis on the coalition building and the ways that you all are working, and working even with the state. With that in mind, Kate, I would love to come to you next to talk about what's going on in Maine. We know that the Governor Mills passed the Women in Construction Executive Order, which aims to boost recruitment, retention, and training of women in the construction industry. And we know that proactively addressing GBVH is key to retaining these women, as Lark just said. And that was baked into the executive order. But I would love for you to talk about the ways in which this work has evolved and grown in Maine through the Department of Labor.
Thank you. So, as you said, part of encouraging women to pursue careers in construction and the trades requires that they know that they're going to have a safe and respectful workplace. And some of the things we've done to build that foundation include working with our Maine apprenticeship program. And Maine has a permanent commission on the status of women. It's a governmental organization focused on women's issues. Working together, those two organizations plus our Maine community college system to develop online training for the sponsors of our construction apprenticeships. And that training provides information and skills to the employers so that they have a baseline understanding of workplace violence and gender-based violence in the workplace, how to prevent it, sexual harassment awareness, and how to prevent, intervene, and respond. So that is for employers and supervisors. We have a program here at the Maine Department of Labor called Safety Works. It's within my bureau and is part of our state OSHA program, and it focuses on training. All of the training it provides is at no cost to employers and workers. Safety Works has long provided OSHA 10 training, and that includes a module on workplace violence. In the context of promoting a safe and respectful and welcoming workplace, we are updating that module so that it is not limited to external causes of violence, but also really digs into internal violence at the workplace, including gender-based violence. This is going to complement the pretty extensive investments that our larger construction firms have made in mental health awareness and expanded access to EAP services for their workers who may need mental health services or supports. And so ensuring that the worker who comes to Safety Works for OSHA 10 is getting a message that aligns with the message they're getting from their employer. And then also helping to reach smaller construction firms that don't have the resources to invest in programs like that. We are partnering with our State Human Rights Commission to develop an on-demand, web-based sexual harassment training. So we have labor standards here related to sexual harassment. They are not comprehensive, but employers are required to give notice that sexual harassment is unlawful, that the Maine Human Rights Commission investigates complaints related to sexual harassment, and they are also required to train their managers and supervisors on how to respond to complaints. So this training that we're designing with the Maine Human Rights Commission brings in prevention strategies and information from one of our nonprofits that focuses on bystander training. So we've heard about the importance of equipping all workers with the knowledge and tools and confidence to speak up when they see someone at risk. And then finally, we are exploring ways to better equip employers and workers when it comes to sexual harassment in the workplace, so that they understand how to prevent it by creating welcoming, safe, respectful workplaces, how to intervene when it happens that is not reliant on a complaint system, but also how to have an effective complaint system. We've just issued a report to our legislature related to sexual harassment in the workplace, and that is informing a lot of the work we're doing, which is meant to be worker-centered, person-centered, rather than, I think I know what Lark needs to be safe. Just ask Lark. Lark, what do you need to be safe, and what can we do to provide that to you? And looking at non-traditional ways of resolving these kinds of situations in the workplace so that the behavior stops and people are safe as quickly as possible. So those are some of the primary things that the Maine Department of Labor and Governor Mills's administration and our partners are doing right now to help make construction work sites safe and welcoming and appealing to women so that they will want to go work there.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic work. And I love that, you're building it into all these different systems and rolling it out broadly across Maine. LaTanya, I would love to hear from you. We know, so Unite Here Local One's participatory research found that 58% of all Chicago hotel workers surveyed had experienced some sort of sexual harassment from guests, including sexual assault. Your guys' hands-off, pants-on campaign resulted in leading legislation mandating panic buttons for hotel staff, where workers can quickly notify the hotel security that they're in a violent situation. Can you talk to us about how this work began and your experience with the campaign? And what was unique about the organizing and push for protection for all hotel workers in Chicago?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. So my name is LaTanya Marshall. I am a union member at Unite Here Local One. I'm also the secretary of the executive board. So basically, in Chicago, our workers, excuse me. In Chicago, I work to address gender violence in the hospitality industry is known as the Hands Off Pants On campaign, short for HOPO. In 2016, our union surveyed over 500 women workers in Chicagoland hotels and casinos about sexual harassment in the workplace. The survey team, it consisted of 5 Unite Here Local One members and one one staff researcher. We found out after surveying 58 of hotel workers surveyed had experienced some form of sexual harassment. Nearly half were surveyed had experienced sexual harassment by a guest exposed at the door or flashed. I'm sorry. I'm a little nervous. I don't know why, but yeah. The pursuit of our the surveys, so the women who were surveyed, oh wow, so nervous. Okay. Let me start over. The women's survey team became the core of the organization efforts to push the policy change, helping grow the group of leaders who were involved in this effort. I worked for over 2 decades in the hospitality industry as a room attendant. As always, it's a thing. The harassment from guests had made me so uncomfortable. It was things that happened that no one talked about. When our union launched the Hands Off Pants On campaign, it promoted it. It helped me to share my experience of sexual harassment. Some of my women coworkers were shocked that it had happened to me. I realized that breaking the silence, the core group of HOPO leaders grew more. I'm messing up. The hope I know the HOPO group grew more and more powerful. People started to speak out about what was happening, organizing and advocating for our ordinance created the space for more women hospitality workers to come forward and just share their experiences. A key part of our campaign was that it was led by women hospitality workers. And what we were demanding was basically on the realization of our work efforts and our experiences. Hotel room attendants had a unique workplace and a particular safety risk. Typically, as a room attendant, we worked alone. Sometimes I'll be on my floor alone, even if there was 2 people assigned to that floor that day. Some of the hotels are a city block long, making us really isolated. Hotel rooms are made for privacy. It can be hard to hear outside of a room, and there is only one exit. There also a power imbalance between a guest who can afford a hotel room and a room attendant, often immigrant women and women of color, who are cleaning these rooms. The physical layout of our workplace combined with the power dynamics can be particularly dangerous. Through our work, through our working leaders, I'm sorry, through our women workers leading this campaign, we found for this policy that particularly addressed our world of work. We knew we needed for an immediate change, oversight, helping when we felt unsafe. Sorry. We needed protections to make sure that we could do our job sufficiently. A, a very important part of our campaign as union leaders helped the help of the Chicago Federation of Labor, who led their voices for our campaign. We created a video of male union leaders reading our experiences as hotel housekeepers and servers. It broadened our fight as our workplace safety issues and not just a women's issue. Armed with the statistics from our surveys and with organizing women workers, pushing for a Chicago City ordinance to address our specific concerns. We found We fought for and won what we call hands off pants on, short for HOPO, including panic buttons for housekeepers and anti sexual harassment policies that explicitly address sexual harassment by hotel guests. The impacts of our HOPO campaign and tangible. My coworkers and I we feel safe at work. Every morning when we clock in, we get our panic button along with our room assignments. I make sure it's fully charged so I know I can press it and I'll get a response. Because of our campaign, speaking out publicly, we were all on the news and building allies across the city and the globe. Now manager and creepy guests think twice. I'm proud to be here today with you all as we continue to create change and end gender-based violence in our industries. We're making strides forward, and we still have a lot of work to do. No matter where we live, what language we speak, our work, our work that we do, we all deserve to be safe and have a voice in our workplaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for bringing your personal story to this group. That takes a lot. I want to echo what Lark said about normalizing. These are a lot of what you said just really resounded with me of we don't have these conversations often. And then when we do start to have them, just like you and your coworkers, we all of a sudden see that we are not alone. And that this is way more widespread. So thank you for sharing your experience. And you did great. Thank you. Agatha, I would love to talk to you about the work that you're doing with Justice for Migrant Women. We found that according to a survey by the California Central Valley, 80% of farm worker women reported that they had experienced sexual violence at work. Can you talk to us about the founding work for Justice for Migrant Women and the Bandana Project? How did the project evolve?
Yes, hi, good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Agda Morgan, and I work with Justice for Migrant Women. And so, the Bandana Project is an art activism project and public awareness campaign aimed at addressing the issue of workplace sexual harassment against farm worker women and girls. And in the United States and on other parts of the globe. It is an art activism and an advocacy project that serves as a healing tool for women across the United States. The Bandana Project was created by our ED and founder Monica Ramirez in 2007 when she was the directing Esperanza, the Immigrant Women's Legal Initiative at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Gotta take a pause because there's a lot to say there. So the Southern Poverty Law Center. So the project is like I said, is an awareness campaign. At the same time, that is also a tool for healing. It was created for members of the community organizers, advocates, and anyone in the anti-sexual violence activism and many other areas. So it's for anyone who wants to participate, right? To really come together and decorate bandanas with words of encouragement, motivating statements, inspirational pictures, or art. All of these different things is whatever comes to you in the moment when we are together working with the bandanas. The bandanas then when they're finished, they're used as an awareness campaign. We we basically hung the bandanas. We put them in different areas where we can create awareness so that people can see the public statements for those who participated. It started with farm. We usually do it with agricultural women. So we go into the farms and we create circles and work with them. And they really are the ones who are creating these beautiful bandanas and the messages for the community. And that brings awareness. And the Bandana Project, again, like I said, was created as an awareness campaign. It was really the origin of that. It comes from the idea that the women who work in the farm, agricultural workers, or those who work in the packing food industry, those who work in the whole entire system that gets the food from the ground all the way to our tables, right? So those women participate in that one. Specifically, the agricultural women use the bandanas as a different mechanism. They use it for protecting themselves from the sun, from the different things that they're used to in the fields. But they also they were using it as a protective mechanism to hide that they were women, hide their gender identity, so that way they will call less attention to them, so they were less exposed to gender-based violence. I don't know if you all have heard, but basically the fields are they have been called the fields are fields of panties or green motels, because the women, just like our previous presenter Latonia shared, women sometimes are isolated working in the field, and that's when they're being exposed. So similar to that, the women's in the field were being exposed as well, very young women as well. So the bandana was created with that in mind, creating awareness and also creating a safe space where women can share their experience and then they can learn from each other, from different things, the different tools or mechanisms they are using to protect themselves. So that's the story behind the Bandana Project. Now moving forward, where we are at, Justice for Migrant Women, when Monica moved out, they brought the Bandana Project with her, and she created our agency, Justice for Migrant Women, who has been really working for many, many years in creating awareness and creating campaigns, continuing using the Bandana Project as a tool to really reach those in the field, those communities that technically are invisible. We don't see them. We don't realize them. We get the food and we don't think, oh wow, this food was raised by somebody who could be exposed to gender-based violence, right? So that is something really important to keep in mind. And nowadays we are really working and creating different cross sections where we use the bandana to come together, but we also use that space to educate women about their rights as in the workplace, their rights as women, and also provided leadership development and different things that helps them to find their voice and to be able to come together, just like our friend and coworkers here from United here, to come together and really find the power that they can create when we come together from different areas of work and we voice our problems and find solutions as the organization where they are working, but also in the community. So that is the Bandana Project.
Thank you so much. I just feel like there is so much amazing work that you all are leading in different ways. And I'm seeing like some like through lines through all of what you're saying. I really hear kind of this resonance of the central role that building worker power and centering worker voice. I mean, Unite Here, the campaign came out of this participatory research project, and really centering it around what's happening for the workers. How Opening it up broadly now to anyone on any of the panelists, and especially kind of thinking through what you all heard from each other that sparked interest in what you're doing now. How do you think workers and communities can lead us to more effective, proactive responses?
Well, I can start since I was the last one, so going backwards a little bit. So I think there are really, really important things to keep in mind when we work in for us as advocates for work or service providers that are connected with those in the field, is to really, really, really center their voices, to know that we need to really center them, bring them together, helping them to find tools, but they're going to lead the tone. They're going to lead what is important to them, just like it was mentioned before by Robin, by Kate, by Lark, right? If they know what they need, and we're there to support them and to give them some of the tools that we know that we have learned from other parts of the world, right? Because we are doing work across countries, right? So letting them to one of the things that I have found when I'm in the fields, when I'm going around, is that a lot of the times workers don't know the information, they don't know their rights, they don't know that they have a voice. They one of the simple things that I am always brought to like ground me is that they said, wow, I did not know that I had the right to speak up. I did not know that I had the right to have protective equipment. So again, letting them know what laws are, because we have a lot of laws, a lot of every year we create new laws and new things, policy, right? It's always but if that policy doesn't get to the people to know that that is something that they have a right to, and to know where they can go to find that information, they're not going to know. They're going to continue in that darkness. So for us is to come together, find a space, create a safe and brave space for them to feel that they can talk about what they need, and then supporting them. They lead the work, not us. They tell us what they need.
Yeah, Kate.
So to build off that, I think it's imperative for policymakers to do what Agatha just said and understand that most people who have a job cannot take time off to come to a public hearing, which is really intimidating, at 2:30 on a Thursday. Like that is not going to work. And so figuring out how to create opportunities and spaces and to actually go out rather than expect people to come in to inform the work of creating policy and regulations and all the things that government does. The other important thing is to not be performative. So don't go out to the farm, don't go out to the union meeting and put your listening hat on and look like you care, and then go back to the office and just do whatever you want to do. Instead, like if you're going to do this right, if you're going to do it, if you really want it to be, person-centered, worker-centered, then you have to act on what you heard, even if it doesn't align with what you thought you knew, right? And that is really hard. And it's actually harder to do than the normal way we do business. And so really, like if you're committed to doing it that way, that it's like participatory research, it's almost like participatory government, which is what we're supposed to have anyway, right? So if you do that, I feel like don't do it if you don't really want to hear and kind of get yelled at, and listen to that and then use that information. But if you do it, then your policies are going to be so much better, and your work is going to be so much more effective.
I'll go with Robin.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to name what we're talking about. And I don't mean like gender-based violence and harassment. I don't mean domestic violence. I don't mean sexual violence. I mean rape. I mean penetration. I mean grabbing me by my boobs and shoving me up against the wall. This is not a minority problem. This is a majority problem. I teach here at the University of Oregon School of Law, and at the end of each semester, I ask my students, what did you take away, right? And last semester, two of my students said, I came in here thinking that only 5% of the population experienced gender-based violence and harassment. And she left here understanding that it was the majority of all of us in all facets of our lives. And that to me is a win. And so if we move in spaces, if we think of other issues in our society that impact as higher percentage of the people that we're talking about as this, it's an epidemic. There's a reason we call it that. It's the number one human rights violation. We have to start, oh, not in my workplace. It's not my problem. And the other thing is that we need to take this out of the personal and the individual and look at it as a systemic problem, right? The most important thing that we can do is I started out on my mistakes. In the beginning, a lot of the interventions I tried made men in these spaces and employers feel like the bad guy, right? And so they get all defensive, right? And be like, not me, I didn't do it, and not in my workplace. And I realized not helpful, right? Like, not because I need them to see I'm not actually into the blame game. I'm about how do we prevent it from happening the next time, right? And so if you enter into that space with an understanding that this is in the water we drink, in the air we breathe, it is so pervasive and normalized, right? And that, we all, though, can sit around a table, all of us agree that we don't want this, shouldn't continue. And then we all have a role that shifts it. And actually talking about it, the term sexual harassment in the United States, I feel like has gotten loaded. I've heard this from men and women, right? Men feel attacked, women feel like it's a burden. So the gender-based violence language is interesting, right? Because we acknowledge we all have a gender, and that being harassed or assaulted based on that identity as a woman, as a man, right, as a queer person, right, is really specific and requires particular interventions that are systemic. We have things we can change in our workplaces, how work is performed. That example I gave about the sewing machine mechanic, those union women workers came together, right? And what the employer was afraid of is that they were going to come to them and say, you need to fire, all these guys, right? And the workers were like, no. They taught me a word in Cambodian that I sent lost, and they forgotten and said, no, Miss Robin, that's just a pop-up toy. They're just going to hire a whole new group of men, right, who are going to do the same thing. So fascinating, right? And by the way, they knew these guys. They're from their community. They're from their community, y'all. This is complicated. And so they're like, no, we just believe that if they understood we didn't want this and that they're not permitted to do, fascinating. So that was the first thing. The second thing is we can't have a sewing machine mechanic with all that power over those workers. That power dynamic, they even said possibly women in that job would do similar things. Think about what I'm saying out loud, right? Is that it's about how, and so they changed. So the sewing machine mechanics no longer had that kind of power, right? They changed the lighting. They have a monitor who walks around on that floor regularly, right? Proactive things that the employer is doing, not putting the burden all on the workers to use the complaint system, but saying, how do I change how my workplace is designed, right? And how I talk about these and I lead, right? And then I name it. And then I'm not afraid, right? As that was just being said, that I'm not afraid to ask and collect the information, because I, as the lawyer, people say, oh, Robin, I can't ask because then I have to do something about it. I'm like, yeah, you do. And it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. You have tools, but if you don't ask, and it's not, have you ever been sexually harassed? Because that term, all of us would have a different understanding of it, right? It's questions designed, right? And Latanya, your folks really taught us this. The questions you guys asked each other in that survey has a man ever opened knocked on when you open the door, when you knock on the door and clean it, right? Does a man ever open it with his robe open? I would never have thought to ask that question, Latanya. I don't work your job. Like, you know what I mean? I would never have thought that. But that's the right question, because we can create an intervention, a panic button, right, that addresses that manifestation of gender-based violence and harassment in that workplace. Now, we can replicate that in the trades, right? We can replicate that for lawyers. We can replicate that, right, for people who work in the service industry, hospitality industry. I've talked a lot with folks in that industry. We can design interventions, but we can't if we sit with this language that is so vague and not clear. I was silenced for the first part of my life. I was told never to speak of these things. What did I do through my silence? I empowered the people who do it to me. Yeah. I'm also like, I'm at a different stage in my life, right? Like close to the, whatever, like, so I have a different place. But the point is, I name it, I call it, I say it, because then people are like, oh my God, right? That is something we don't want here, right? None of us. So I think those are some of the things that I've learned, and from all of you actually, and I'm still learning.
Yeah, go ahead, Lark.
Ooh, my cup is so full right now. And I feel like I'm just learning so much from you all. If you are an employer, right? If you are going to solicit feedback from your workers, be equally prepared to clearly explain to them how they're not going to be retaliated against, right? It's right?
Yeah.
To Robin's point, it's not about you and how you are perceived, right? Personally, it's about protecting your workers, right? If you want to look at it from the business perspective, right? Which, in my opinion, is um, it's one component, right? To look at it shouldn't be the only component, right? But it's about um, protecting the investment that you made, right? So think critically about being proactive and outlining how you're not going to retaliate against that worker and communicate it widely, right? I think a lot of times it's like so much information is just like held within the pillars of power, right? And it's not disseminated amongst workers, right? Or it's disseminated against the folks who are well connected on their job site, right? So retaliation is something we see a lot in the construction industry, right? Um, and I'm going to broaden it out actually, when that tradesperson, right, is experiencing harassment, experiencing discrimination on that job site, and then they are moved to another job site, and that perpetrator is allowed to stay. They're allowed to accumulate overtime hours. They're allowed to retire with dignity and respect. Meanwhile, right, that tradesperson, oftentimes tradeswomen, right, are blackballed.
Mhm.
So you can't solicit feedback from people without providing that equal protection from retaliation. And it's so prevalent in our industry.
Agatha, I did see your hand go up, and I want to make sure.
Lark already covered a lot of it. I think the only thing to add to that is that with the retaliation, especially for those the community that I work with, the agricultural workers who are the most isolated, who are the ones who are less benefited, who are getting less paid. So they have to really navigate either do I report? And then if I report, am I going to lose my job? And I'm actually the single mother who is actually working very hard to maintain that and really don't have a lot of resources because for example in the agricultural field, right, there's a lot of the workers who are coming as either are migrant, they're coming with a specific work permits, the visas for agricultural workers, and or there are those who are here who are undocumented. So again, that really are creating very different barriers that we have to think about it. And I think some of that is also similar to our workers that Latonia was mentioning, right? In all the in the other fields, in the hotels industry, the restaurants, right? So thinking about, yes, they may want to participate, but they also have to keep in mind, I still have to provide for my family if I speak up to what Lark was saying. What is the retaliation that is going to happen? Are they going to even listen to me? Because they are invisible. And the other thing, throughout history, we can see that whenever especially in the agricultural business, in the agricultural business, is that they stop hiring people here, but then they bring in more and more people, right? So then, okay, you're not wanting to work. If they're united and they want to, do something to stop it, okay, you're not working, so we're going to bring somebody else who will come and work. So they have a lot of control. So therefore, they're silencing those communities who are not able to speak up sometimes. So when we're thinking about how we're going to work with them, how we're going to empower them, we also have to think about what are other ways that those owners are going to go around and find other workers to replace the ones that they're trying to get their rights, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this leads me back to something that, I feel like has resonated through all of y'all's talks. I think Lark explicitly said the word accountability, you know. So just really interested in this issue area. Latonya, I say you come out of mute, so I will step back so you can step up.
I'm really happy to be here.
and having these conversations, because I can think about when we first started our campaign, um, and like sitting in a little circle in the cafeteria at a table with my coworkers and having these conversations, and it dawned on me when we had them, like, this is really an issue, right? Because it was so normalized for us. Like it happened on a daily. And I felt like when we were uncomfortable, we would just grab another person, because essentially we have to go back to this room, right? Um, and it was just like, reporting it to management, and they just look at the status of the guest, of the person in the room, like what room was it, to know if he was a platinum guest or, he's spending a lot of money, not taking in consideration our feelings, right? So when I think about it, as a union, like we have a lot of these trainings and a lot of conversations around retaliation and sexual harassment, because it is huge in our industry, right? I'm just happy that I'm not standing alone, right? Because you think about, and this came up around our campaign too, like non-union workplaces that don't have a voice, and it's happening every single day to these workers, and they feel like they don't have a voice. Um, I feel like I'm proud that I'm censored around some stability where us as union members, we're not fighting alone. Like this is something that was not easy, that took a lot of time. I feel like what really opened my eyes for it was when we made this video with the Chicago Federation of Labor, and we had men speak for us to say, this is what's happening in our workplaces. It made it different, because I feel like a lot of times people normalize things, and they they act as if it didn't happen to them, it's not their problem. And I feel like it's bigger than that. And it should be everybody's problem. Nobody goes to work to be harassed, whether it's sexual harassment, physical, emotional, any of it. Like it just shouldn't happen. And I'm just happy to consistently be a part of these conversations, change. I feel like our campaign not is not only helping the city of Chicago, it's a global movement. Us as a union, we're going to continue to fight. This is what we do. This is what we know how to do. We're great at it. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
I'm like so inspired right now. Thank you. And I'm inspired too because I know that with that ordinance, you're protecting all hotel workers, right? The reach gets extended beyond just the union, and it's had a really powerful impact. Yeah, and just looking at the status and thinking back, this is the power imbalances that are here, right? And yeah, I would love any other thoughts on this kind of accountability piece. Like, how do we, especially leaders, right? Leaders in our workplaces, leaders in our movements, leaders, like, how do we hold people accountable for continuing to address this? This is not a one and done, right? Like all of you have said, it's proactive, it's changing structures, it's moving the systems forward. Um, yeah, so that's where my head is at right now with this. Agatha, go ahead.
I think something that is important to also bring to the conversation is that, it's not just the workers in the people who is doing policy and creating new change, right? Creating new policies. I'm sorry, but it's also important to think about, the community. Where's the accountability with the community, and how the community is a really important key to create change, cultural change that is going to impact everyone in those specific communities. Because again, we have to think about getting those who are involved in the act, in the sexual violence act, accountability from the one who create or did the harm with the one who was received the harm. Is those, but also what about the employees or employers as well? That's a small community, but then let's go to the larger community, right? What is our community going to do to help and support those who are working and trying to create change, who are moving forward, those unions and everybody? So again, we're seeing it, especially right now, all the different movements that are coming in. Like it requires every single one of us to be part of it. So I just wanted to start that kind of conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, every single one of us has to be part of this. God, Robin.
Yeah, I think just listening and learning from all of you, Lark, your poignant comments about retaliation, right? This is real, and retaliation takes a lot of forms. Retaliation is being blacklisted from that entire career path, right? Let's just talk about this. When we say this word, again, it's one of these words, retaliation, right? People are like, oh, someone says a nasty thing to you. No, it's a little more serious than that. You lose your friggin' career if you complain about this. Blacklisting, okay? And then the person who did it to you, often while an investigation is taking place, let's say you use that mechanism. And again, my goal is never to have to use it because it's not happening. You still have to, in most workplaces, you are required to go to work and continue to work with the person who did the thing to you while they're investigating. Okay, that is not possible. By the way, Ghana, fisheries, they have a policy in their workplaces and a collective bargaining agreement that says once the complaint is filed, that survivor has remedies. Remedies. You know what remedies look like? You can be on paid leave. They can be placed on paid. They can require, depending upon the severity, that the individual who did it pending the investigation is put on paid leave. So that what they're acknowledging is continuing to work together after a complaint, regardless of the outcome of that complaint, is not acceptable, is not possible, right? So in addition to that, something I've really been listening to for the last few years is retaliation from the rest of the workforce. So it's not just the leadership in a union that is invested in maintaining a culture. It's the whole work, even regardless of gender identity. I have to say this, men and women together are protecting the status quo, because the other thing is scary, right? Like, and so that we have to name too. And so when we say it and we mean it, we need to name it. What are the consequences, right? If you come forward and say, I saw my coworker say this to this person, right? Or say they were not going to put her on that shift, or they're not going to, right? And this is not the person who did it to them. And so this is really powerful. That's what culture is, right? When it's coming from all parts, it's about maintaining. And I know it sounds counterintuitive that people want to maintain a culture of abuse. And yet I think we can all appreciate why, right? That is a structure that is known and we know how to function in it, sadly, but it doesn't mean it's safe, and it doesn't mean you should accept it. So accountability has to come, right, from all of these places, and your government has a role to play. And so what I've seen with the agreements that I mentioned, and I put the links in the chat, is in each one of these agreements, and I'm focusing on the garment sector, but you can see this applied to other things in the supply chain. In fact, to Sodexo here in the United States, right, has entered agreements, right, around the country with their locals that work in cafeterias, for example. And what these binding agreements look like I said, Levi's, right, enters into a binding agreement with the manufacturers of their clothing in Lesotho, which, by the way, is a country completely contained in South Africa, which I didn't know until I did this work. Okay, so Lesotho has a lot of garment factories. It's the number one or two form of manufacturing, right? And so their unions worked with women-led organizations in their community where survivors of gender-based violence were going for services. When they were getting raped on the job, they weren't going to the union. They were going to a local service provider for survivors of gender-based violence. Shocker, right? So we got all these people got together, the employer, the manufacturer, Levi's, the unions, and they designed an intervention for that place in that moment, which included a binding agreement where, get a load of this, Levi's and other garment companies who have closed said to the manufacturer in Lesotho, if you don't do this program with these unions and these women's organizations, we will not continue to source from your plant. That's accountability. That's accountability. And the Fair Food Program in Florida is another example of this. So when you talk about accountability that is structural, this is what we need, right? And that's now been replicated in this Dendergal agreement in India, replicated in a different way. It looks different there. Lo and behold, different people, different cultures, different things, right? Still led by women workers, and then different in Java, which is in Indonesia, beautiful place. Same situation, same rampant gender-based violence. These are all female-dominated workforces, by the way. Just want to flag that, except for the people making all the decisions, who are all men. So that's what accountability can look like. And I'm excited to see that perpetuate, right? And we see in the trades and in other places where, in the hotels, right? The Hands Off Pants On campaign, LaTanya, like the hotels in Chicago now see the benefit, right? And they're engaging with the union about how to make sure that program is working. And they've now, I ask, because I'm that girl, when I go to Chicago and I meet with the guy who comes to fix my heat because it's not working in my hotel room, he's like, yeah, here's my panic button. He's 6'8", and he's wearing a panic button. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Why are you wearing that? Well, it makes me feel safer. Fascinating. Do you know how you got that? Thank the women of color in your union.
Lark,
period.
Yes, period. Lark, I saw your hand up for a minute, and so I just want to pause and see if you wanted to jump in. Okay. All right. We do have one question in the chat. I'm really intrigued by all of y'all's talk about partnerships and the ways in which you work with other groups. I do want to turn real quickly to the chat, though. We got a question that says, I work with career and technical education in community colleges, but at the state level, we work really hard to make sure women understand that the trades pay well and they are welcome in those programs. But I worry about educating women in those fields only to send them into industries that are male-dominated and often either unaware or unwilling to address women's safety issues in the workplace. In a community college CTE programs, how can the colleges talk about this without scaring women out of high-paying jobs? Kate,
I jump in.
Jumped right in.
So one of the impetuses to our work was that our communications director, a young woman, was part of these conversations about getting women into the trades. And then we were hearing these reports that women were experiencing all kinds of horrific things on the work site. And she said, why in the world would we tell someone to go work in a place where they're not safe? And we were like, oh, yeah. Okay. So one of the things we've done with our community colleges is this module around apprenticeships. We have developed information so that, and it's developed in a way that it is not like Robin talked about, like some people are evil and you're all responsible. It's not like that. It's meant to say, these are your rights. Like Agata said, like, I didn't know I was entitled to PPE. I didn't know, so before you even go on the work site, these are your rights. These are the ways to enforce those rights. These are the behaviors that are not acceptable. These are skills and resources to help you navigate. And that's all in the overarching apprenticeship training and how to have an effective apprenticeship program, to be a registered apprenticeship, to make sure your apprentices make it all the way through. And so because it's embedded in this larger education effort, it feels less threatening. Like, it's not like, oh, and today I have to go do the sexual harassment thing. No, like, it's just part and parcel of what you can expect, what you're, as an apprentice, as an apprenticeship sponsor, and what your rights and responsibilities are. And I think doing that way too, like when I tell Agata what her rights and responsibilities are as a worker, at the same time as I'm telling Lark what her rights and responsibilities are as an employer, like it's like, I was almost going to say mutually assured destruction. It's like we're all on the same page. Like, this is what we are responsible for, and this is what we're entitled to. And so I think that that has made it more accessible. There's less cognitive dissonance about like, I don't want to hear this. And I mean, it's new, right? We haven't done our evaluation yet on how effective it is. It's new, but the feedback is that it's accessible. It doesn't feel judgmental or threatening or off-putting. Instead, it's like, all right, I'm going to be an apprentice. This is what I can expect. So I don't know if that's helpful. I'm happy to, I don't have it handy, but I will through class share information about it. So if you're interested in replicating it, we can connect you with the folks on our team so that you can see what we're doing.
Thank you. Yes, we will be sharing stuff after this webinar. Lark.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, be honest, right? Be honest about the challenges of entering a male-dominated industry. Do not sugarcoat it. People deserve to know what they're walking into. They deserve that transparency. I think um, while no tradeswoman should be used as a guinea pig, I'm just always in awe of how resilient tradeswomen are, how motivated they are to be trailblazers in this space. Um, and I think also framing it as, hey, while we know that you are underrepresented, right? We know that for women in construction, specifically women working on their tools, are about 4.1% nationally, right? We know the number is abysmal, and you can be a part of changing that narrative, right? I'm forever in amazement at how many tradeswomen really commit to that belief, right? But I also think expect to be a connector for that woman, right? When you're having that conversation, you don't just leave it at, hey, want to be a part of the 4.1%, want to boost it up 4.2%. No, it's also saying, let me connect you to a journey woman, right? In that trade you're interested in. Oh, you're interested in manufacturing. Let me connect you to a woman, who is a CNC operator, right? Connect them to people who can serve as their mentors, right? Who can help them along their career journey navigate those ups and downs and also, celebrate their victories with them, right? Um, for those male allies, have them on deck, right? I would actually say have a line of communication to allies in this work, right? So that you have your group of folks that you can reach out to again to connect those women to. So I think honesty and being connecting is the key there.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go back to take the moderator's privilege since I don't see any more questions in the Q&A section. Can we talk about partnerships and collaboration? Because that has just been something that you all have talked about throughout your comments and why is it so important? What have you seen about the partnerships that have been really inspirational? And what have been the sticking points? Jump on in.
I'm happy to kick it off. I mean, I think partnerships are about power. So again, for me, partnerships have taught me that that's how we hold that employer accountable, hold that government employer, hold our society. When I walk out in the street and protest with a diverse coalition of people who all have different experiences and expertise, um, we're able to change the world, right? And change our workplaces, big and small. And so the campaign that I was a part of that led to International Labor Organization Convention 190 was a global campaign led by union women workers. And they were in the streets, y'all, for over a decade. And they were in the streets with human rights organizations. They were in the streets with women's rights organizations. They were in the streets, right, with farmers. I mean, like, if you can imagine a diverse coalition, that's what you need because your community And part of that happened because we started speaking. When you start to speak about this, right? People are like, "Oh, Robin, you can't hold conversations where people talk about their goodness." And I'm like, I can, because we're ready. We're over it. And it is traumatic, but we're grown people and we are in trauma on a regular basis because of this. And actually, I have seen and personally experienced moving through pain to power, and the power of being seen and knowing, as you have said today, not alone. I'm not alone. And other people see me and respect me even through this journey. And that is a through line, right? And I worked in domestic violence, and so again, working with organizations that are like, oh, I work with survivors away from the workplace. Well, they're all workers, right? You know what I mean? So again, I think broad-based coalitions, and they help us think about these issues in different ways. They help bring resources to the table, and that community innovation is so important, as we've heard, because the impact of gender-based violence and harassment, if you experience it at work, it's like a ripple, right? It goes beyond you individually to your family and your community, and it impacts everybody. And so everyone has a vested interest in making sure that it doesn't continue. And so those connections can be formal or informal, right? They can be done in a variety of different ways, but honoring and lifting that up, I think, is essential, as we've heard from so many today.
Go ahead.
I think coalition building is super important for all the reasons that Robin just outlined, but especially for like asset mapping and like collecting of assets and resources. Um, I think about the importance of like local mutual aid funds during this time, right? And like how I really have been seeing, community members really advocate for themselves by pooling resources, right? Helping people with food supplies, um, transportation assistance, cash assistance, right? Communities taking care of themselves, right? And really rethinking, the um, rethinking the centering of power. Just, I mean, Robin, that really resonates with me, honestly, like shifting power, you know? So I think just, at times in this work, it can feel very heavy. You can feel very defeated, right? But when you know that you have all these community assets around you in terms of like thought partnering, in terms of like tangible financial assets, you start to kind of reclaim your power. Not kind of, you do. You're able to reclaim your power, right? So yeah, and that's where I've seen it be most helpful, just like pooling resources.
I love
And
that. Oh yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
And I would just say, like, through our whole campaign and like just the effort and support of our allies, like specifically the Chicago Federation of Labor, like they really supported us. And I've just thinking about what Robin was talking about, like just having just people behind you. I feel like power is everything. I think if, I don't, when I think about it, like, you know, I don't even know, like, if I wasn't, a part of a union, like how would, my company be, like the place that I work for, like, it was happening for so long, and, and we were silent for so long. So, just, being around, and having these conversations and just being empowered by other people, and being a part of the movement. I think this is something we do every single day, for our union contracts and everything. Like, it's just the support of everybody. And I really truly believe that is important. And I feel like this conversation is going to continue to be something that we continue to talk about, because we have so many people that's passionate about this, like that it shouldn't happen. So the power is right here. Like we're growing.
I gotta.
Yes, I think for me, collaborations simply is like You can't do it. You can't create change alone. Collaborations is the tool, is the avenue that is going to help everybody come together. Everybody brings something. My skills are going to be different than Latania's skills, and my connections and resources are going to be different than Latania and Lark. So coming together, we're bringing more people together. We're bringing more skills, more uh, support, more ways to move the movement as is needed, right? So for me, that is a key. Nobody can work in isolation. Actually, if we're not, we tend to, what I have noticed in the field is that we tend to be isolated. Oh, domestic violence here, healthcare advocacy here. Like, we need to come together because people's lives are not a single story. People's lives have intersections on everything in health, education, transportation, housing. So let's take out the single story. When we come together, we bring that in. We bring the community. It's going to bring accountability for every single partner and for everyone who is partnering there. So that's what collaboration is coming together. We're stronger together. Everybody participates and makes the movement a better place. Everybody has ideas. There's not such a single person who's going to have the whole ideas. That also helps into really getting to realize that a single person is not going to be the movement. It's all of us together who are the movement. That way we can actually stop idolizing people. And we have seen that, and I'm not going to say anything because that's another rabbit hole that we don't need to talk about it. But I think collaboration is the key. Moving together, all of us here, just this panel, how many amazing stories and ideas we choose share here. That's
Yeah.
collaboration. That's what the answer for the question is.
Yeah, Kate.
So I agree with everything everyone has said. And because I'm very practical, I'm going to say that partnerships and coalitions are hard work, especially if you do it the way that particularly Agata has talked about. Bringing in broad-based folks, not just like, these are the list of my friends and we're all going to be in a coalition. I deliberately go look for contrarians and I bring them into my coalitions because I am not as smart as I think I am. And there's value in the dialectic. And you know what? That is exhausting. Oh my gosh, it's exhausting. But
Yeah.
it's worth it. It really is worth it. And so, just like I talked about, if you're going to do this participatory policymaking, do it right and be tired. The same with coalition building. Don't just bring your friends that agree with you and be an echo chamber and, you know, do it right. Build community. Use it as an opportunity to change someone's mind, or maybe, oh my gosh, change your mind. And so, and then be prepared that it's tiring. And so if you know that, you do want a couple of friends, right? Like, I'm going to bring Agata and Latanya and Robin and Lark with me so that on the day that I am exhausted and not my best self, Lark can step up and be like, I got this. And then on the day that neither of us can do it, Agata can be like, I got this, right? And so I think being strategic, like, it's not ladies who lunch. This is like, we're going to be thoughtful about this. We're going to share the labor, and we're going to recognize that it is labor, and we're going to birth something that is amazing. But holy camole, is it going to be a lot of hard work? And so, just like Lark said about being honest with the women who want to move into the trades, we need to be honest with our coalition partners. Like, yeah, this is not a monthly lunch and you go off and go do what you want afterwards. This is going to be hard work.
Yeah. I love that about changing your own mind. I mean, and I feel that every day where I step into these spaces and I learn so much and I get so much inspiration, and it gives me motivation to continue to do the work I do and to continue to push this forward. I know we are 1 minute until we're at the end of this conversation. We could go on for so much longer, but I know we will keep these conversations going. This is not the end. This is jumping in midstream. Before we officially end, I just wanted to flag for everyone who has joined us that we have been continuing to drop resources in the chat. CLASP will collect all of these, send them out afterwards with some more. Kate, looking at you to send us your stuff. So don't worry if you didn't grab them all. We will be sending them around. And I just want to say thank you. Heartfelt thank you to all of you who are here speaking, sharing your stories. Just truly, this has been such a great conversation. And I want to thank all the attendees who took time out of your day to come join us for this conversation. This is, like I said, the first of our Equity Matters series in 2026, so keep an eye out for more to come. Thank you so much, all of you, and we will be in touch. Yes, Lark.
Quick, I added a correction in the chat. I don't know if it's showing up yet. It's 4.3%, so making a little bit more progress.
4.3%. So a little bit inch by inch in the
Inch by
construction
inch, but I
trade.
just wanted to correct that. It should show up though.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.